Hello and welcome to another episode of Twiml Talk, the podcast where I interview interesting people doing interesting things in machine learning and artificial intelligence. I'm your host, Sam Charrington. A few updates before we jump into our show. This week, October 10th through 11th, I'll be in Montreal for the Rework Deep Learning Summit. We held a flash giveaway last week for one lucky listener to get a chance to join me at the conference. And that winner is Matt Stone, a listener from Toronto. Thanks to everyone who entered, and be on the lookout for more giveaways to close out the year. Hey, if you're in the Montreal area, I'd love to connect. Reach out to me via Twitter or the contact page at twimlai.com if you'd like to meet up. The show you're about to hear is the first of a series of shows recorded in San Francisco at the Artificial Intelligence Conference, which was hosted by our friends at O'Reilly and Intel Nervana. In addition to their support for the event itself, Intel Nervana is also our sponsor for this series of podcasts from the event. A huge thanks to them for their continued support of the show. In this episode, I speak with Naveen Rao, Vice President and General Manager of Intel's AI Products Group, and Scott Apeland, Director of Intel's Developer Network. It's been a few months since we last spoke with Naveen, so he gives us a quick update on what Intel's been up to, and we discuss his perspective on some recent events in the AI ecosystem. Then, Scott and I dig into Intel Nervana's new DevCloud offering, which was announced at the conference. We also discuss the Intel Nervana AI Academy, a new portal offering hands-on learning tools and other resources for various aspects of machine learning and AI. In addition to my conversations with Naveen and Scott, this show is packed with more interviews that I know you'll love, including Paul Tepper of Nuance on conversational interfaces, Gunnar Carlson of Stanford and IASD on topological data analysis, Laura Froelich and Mo Patel of Think Big Analytics on some interesting machine learning use cases they've implemented, and Ian Stoica of UC Berkeley on his work at the Rise Lab and Ray, a new platform for reinforcement learning. Finally, a quick reminder about the upcoming Twiml online meetup. On Wednesday, October 18th at 3 p.m. Pacific Time, we'll be discussing the paper Visual Attribute Transfer Through Deep Image Analogy by Jing Liao and others from Microsoft Research. The discussion will be led by Duncan Stothers. To join the meetup or to catch up on what you missed from the first two meetups, visit twimlai.com/meetup. And now, on to the show. All right, everyone. I am here at the AI conference brought to you by O'Reilly and Intel Nervana, and I'm here with Naveen Rao, who is the General Manager of Intel's Artificial Intelligence Products Group. Welcome, Naveen.
Thanks, Sam. Great to be here.
It's great to have you here. So we're going to spend a few minutes this morning just catching up on what Intel Nervana has been up to. And then we've got a really interesting interview scheduled to talk about one of the products that you guys are announcing here at the event.
Sounds great.
So what's new?
Well, it's been a very eventful few months. We started the Artificial Intelligence Products Group about 5 months ago now. And, really getting resources around Intel aligned around this focus area now. The company has been super supportive from the top down to make this happen. And I think, it's a reflection of the importance of AI to Intel. We want to be at the forefront of it, not just from the product standpoint, but also from the research standpoint.
Mm-hmm. And so you made some announcements at the event today. Tell us a little bit about those.
A lot of it is around our connection with developers. The DevCloud was one where we can connect with developers, get them working on our tools, but also training people. There's a big appetite right now for knowledge and understanding, how to build AI solutions and how to actually solve industry problems. And we put together a very nice set of tutorials, Intel Nervana Academy, and also having computational support for those tools and actually computational resources available is what the DevCloud is about. And, that'll actually go hand in hand with Intel Nervana Cloud coming up in the future where you can get access to the latest and greatest technologies.
Okay. So where can folks find the tools the documentation and tools that you released?
From intelnervana.com or just Google Intel Nervana Academy.
Okay. Awesome. And so is the DevCloud, what's the relationship between the DevCloud and Intel Nervana Cloud that's forthcoming?
The DevCloud is really meant for developers and education, whereas the Intel Nervana Cloud is actually the enterprise grade solution for companies. Okay. So, one is more, here's access to our tools in a packaged format. The other thing is the Intel Nervana Cloud is really our latest technology in a very kind of low-cost way of getting access to it.
Okay. And then you've got a keynote tomorrow that you're doing with Steve Jurvetson. What are you going to be talking about there?
Well, as you know, Steve may have been, as you may know, Steve was one of our early investors at Nirvana and, has really become an industry expert in this area. And, I find it very fortunate to have him involved with us from the start, guiding some of our direction. And it'll really just be a conversation between us, talking about, some of the things that are exciting coming up, how hardware is going to evolve for the future of AI and drive the future of AI. What is the future of AI? What kind of problems will we be solving? Why is it important? It's really going to be a conversation, and I think it should be entertaining.
Well, what is the future of AI?
I'm going to save that for tomorrow.
Well, I promise you no one will hear this before tomorrow.
Okay. I think one of the main messages from my perspective is AI is really a set of techniques that allow us to scale intelligence. Mm-hmm. We can now take in more resources than we could possibly do as individual humans, loosely coupled by language. That we're hitting that fundamental limitation now because we've gotten really good at gathering data. And now we have too much data and we actually can't do much with it as individuals. Humans can't scale to that level. So we need to build technologies that allow us to do it. And it's really kind of continuing along the evolution of the scientific method. Humans formed this procedure to really make testable, repeatable results and try to get to the ground truth of the world. And I think this is part of that, right? We just want to do it on a bigger scale. One human can only experience so much, but we can actually now put devices out in the world that can experience a lot, bring it all together. So that's really what I think AI is about and why it's important. It's really allowing us to continue along the evolution of what it means to be human.
Mm-hmm. And one of the themes that came up in the keynotes this morning is related to a comment you just made. We've become really good at gathering and collecting data, but not necessarily so good at collecting labeled data sets that are trainable to create machine learning models and AI models. Is Intel doing anything in that space at all?
Yeah, so there are three fundamental types of learning. There's what you just described would be called supervised learning. This is really about taking data that's already been annotated by a human and saying this is what we want to get out of a model. Reinforcement learning is more like kind of how you train your dog. Dog did something good, you give him a treat, and he does that good thing more often. The other, I would say the big frontier right now is unsupervised learning. And that's really about finding potentially useful structure in data before you know what you want to do with it. And that's really what needs to be cracked to enable this kind of scalability, because actually going through and labeling all the data in the world is not possible, right? There's too much already. If we froze the world today and handed out 100 megabytes to every man, woman, and child on the planet, it would take us 30 years to get through all of it. So, that's not something that's possible. The only way to do it is to crack it from an algorithmic standpoint and then throw the computational horsepower at it that we're building. So that's, I think, one of the big things we're going to see in the next couple of years is research into the unsupervised training world. And we are doing that as well and providing tools to allow researchers to move this field forward.
Are there any particular examples of progress in that space that comes to mind for you or that your tools are helping facilitate?
I think GANs, generative adversarial networks, are a big one. This is something that started becoming popular about a year and a half ago, showing some really promising results now. And this is towards more unsupervised kind of methods. Right. What our tools have helped there is really the speed. GANs are computationally intensive. They take a lot of horsepower and a lot of time. And 4 years ago, you simply couldn't do it. You just didn't have the tools and computational capabilities that we have today. By providing better tools, faster, more scalable, larger parameter memories, these kinds of things, we can actually drive these fields forward. And that's the way I see it, is like when we put out a new architecture that has fundamentally new capabilities, smart researchers are going to do things with it that we had never even thought of. And that's what I think is really cool. It's not the stuff that we're thinking about. That should work. Yeah. But it's the other stuff that's going to happen.
Yeah, very interesting. One of the things I remember from our last conversation was we were talking about Intel and Intel's role in the space, and you made a comment to the effect that, hey, we're in the first inning, if that, right? Oh, yeah. And in the context of tools, I think last time we talked a little bit about the support for Nirvana Graph and some of the projects that were announced last time at the AI conference in New York. And a lot of the conversation was around support for TensorFlow as kind of one of these backend frameworks. And interestingly enough, like I think, a few months ago, everyone thought that TensorFlow was like the crowned king and the game was over. Yeah. And now, like out of nowhere, we're hearing about PyTorch all over the place.
And I'm just going to go there.
I'm just wondering if you have any, thoughts or perspective on, the market and how it will evolve and what we should expect to see.
You can look at the past. We saw the same thing happen with web technologies, right? Or the same thing happening. There's a new web technology to do responsive dynamic web pages out every year, I feel like. Right? I can't keep up because I don't do that stuff anymore. So I think you're going to see a very similar thing happening here when there's a new set of capabilities that kind of catapult some set of researchers. Everyone was going to want to use it. Right. TensorFlow was kind of favored for the last 8 months, 9 months. We'll see what happens in the future. I think there's plenty of room for innovation here. It's not a done deal by any means. I think I even said that then. It's like, I've seen this happen. I've seen this game before. And, we'll support what's out there, of course. We want to provide innovations through our own software stack that we own in open source, Neon, on top of ngraph. But we obviously want to support what the community is using more broadly. And if that's PyTorch, great. If it's TensorFlow, great too. We have no problem with it. I think, we're providing that computational substrate under the hood. And so we want to make sure that researchers have access to what they need.
Mm-hmm. More broadly, what do you see as the role of ecosystems in enabling AI solutions and AI tools to evolve?
Ecosystems are absolutely key, right? There's not one person who can do this on their own, right? It's just not going to happen. Not even one single big company, I think. There's too many smart people working on this problem to not work together on a common set of tools and a common language, right? So the way the big problems are going to get solved, like this unsupervised problems, things like that, is really through this openness of publishing. People putting stuff on archive is great, but then having peer review and papers accepted by NIPS and ICML, these big conferences, and then providing the code to actually show the implementations. That's been a very virtuous cycle, I think. We've seen a lot of innovation happen quickly. You get something out there, the code's out there, you can download it, play with it, modify it, and then put out the next thing on top of it. Right? I think it's actually a great paradigm for any kind of innovation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I think, it's going to be very exciting in the next year or so. We're going to be making a lot of announcements about some of the things coming to fruition. I mean, we're making a lot of bets right now. We've come from a place where Intel is a CPU manufacturer, and that's how people were perceiving it a year ago. And now we're going to be providing leadership in AI. I think it's very exciting to see that transition and be part of it. So stay tuned for some cool things coming up.
Along the line of some of those bets, Brian recently published a blog post that talked about the $1 billion that the company is investing across the AI spectrum. Any comments on that? There were a number of startups mentioned and some other things.
Yeah, I mean, Intel is a huge, if not the biggest VC in the Valley. So we invest in a lot of different kinds of companies. I mean, obviously we look at it from a strategic value standpoint, but also just from a monetary return, just like a VC. So we've placed a lot of bets there, and want to seed the ecosystem to build and innovate. And startups are where a lot of that happens. Then beyond that, some of that investment is also internally what we're doing and aligning our resources around. So I think it's a really good readout of the emphasis and focus we're putting on AI at Intel.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, great. Thanks so much, Naveen, for joining us, and I'm looking forward to catching up with you next time.
Absolutely. Great talking with you.
Great. All right, everyone, I'm here at the AI conference with Scott Apeland, who is the Director of Developer Programs with Intel Nervana. And we're here to talk about the DevCloud that was launched today. Welcome, Scott.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here.
Great to have you. So it sounds like you had a big launch last night. How did it go?
Really went well. So back about 10 months ago in November last year, we announced our AI Academy. So this was our program for helping students, developers, teachers really learn more about AI, how to use it, get access to the technology and the tools. So we kicked that off. Today, we really announced the next stage of that, which is making cloud compute accessible to a broad set of developers and students with our new Nirvana DevCloud.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the DevCloud and what the focus is there. And in particular, compute, unlike a few years ago, compute is much more readily available on, various public-facing consumer clouds. What's different about DevCloud?
Yeah. Well, one of the challenges for folks getting started in AI is actually having access and being able to get started with compute in a way that's economical for them without having to invest in it. Mm-hmm. So for all of our AI Academy members, they'll have free access to the DevCloud. And this is this is a very large scale cluster, and it'll have the latest Xeon scalable processors on there. And developers can sign up. They can use it to sandbox new projects they're working on. They can use it for their homework exercises they're doing in class. They can do just test out things, or if they have a compelling project, they really want to get started and use it. As Academy members, they sign up. They'll be given access. They can start for 4 weeks and use it for 4 weeks. And then at the end of the 4 weeks, if they need it longer, then post the project they're working on. We'd like to see what they're working on and let other developers see what they're working on. And they can get extended for another 4 weeks or even longer if it's necessary. So in this way, they're getting access to as much cloud compute as they're going to need for quite a while to get them up and started. It's not for commercial production type of applications, but a great way to get started.
Oh, great. Is their use of the DevCloud limited to, it doesn't sound like it's limited to just exercises that are part of the Academy. They can do any project that they come up with?
Yeah. Let me just spend a few more minutes talking about the Academy, what it is, and then you can understand how they use the DevCloud. So the Academy includes a lot of learning resources, so tutorials, online classes, webinars, webcasts, from basic getting started, machine learning 101, deep learning 101, and intermediate to advanced. So a really good curriculum to learn about AI. But if you're already a professional developer and you just want to, hey, let's use the latest software that's optimized, let's maybe use Neon framework or some other new Intel technology, you'll have access to that in the Academy. And then you'll have technical support. So we have a real mix of professional developers, students are getting started, graduate students are working on research projects, and they can all use the DevCloud. For example, so just last night we had a Dev Jam here in San Francisco. It's kind of day zero of the O'Reilly conference, and we had about 500 developers, students, startups attend this. And on the stage, I did a fireside chat with 6 of our students who are working on projects. Okay. And the types of projects they're working on were just amazing, especially when you look at the variety. So one of them was doing a project on epilepsy, and he was doing EEG scans and connectivity analysis of the brain, and using that to help patients manage epilepsy and predict seizures and things like that. So he's working on just a fascinating project there. Another student was doing a trail cam project. So if you're out in the wild and you have a trail cam, not only does it turn on and record when wildlife pass by, but it will try to recognize what type of wildlife that is and alert you. So if it's a dangerous
run.
Yes, if it's a dangerous one, then tell the campers nearby time to get out of there. Another student is working on mosquito detection and identification. Because mosquitoes, there's thousands of varieties, but there's only a small number that are real dangerous that maybe carry malaria or Zika. So with his phone, he's creating an application where it would take a photo, recognize what type of mosquitoes, and tell you if it's a dangerous type.
Interesting.
So that's just a sample. Another fun one that I liked was a student from Rutgers who has developed an application where it will scan your head, look at your facial structure, your head structure, and then based on popular hairstyles that have similar facial structures, recommend hairstyle for you and maybe a beard style as well. Okay. So you never have to worry anymore about what you should get your hair cut. Just have this app tell you exactly what your hair should look like and go get it cut like that.
Oh, wow.
So quite a variety of things that they're working on, and they have access to the DevCloud and to our technical support as well, because we announced also today that we have a partnership with Tata Consulting Services to put in place an AI Center of Excellence. Okay. And we're going to leverage TCS's expertise in AI and use that to help to support the Academy members. So when they need to get stuck on a project or using the DevCloud, we'll have special engineers who can support them and provide the support to help them. And they'll be located around the world because TCS is a worldwide organization. Yeah.
Now, TCS is a consulting company. It's hard to get a consulting company to do anything without dollars changing hands. Sure. If I'm an Academy member and I run into something and I need some help, how does that, do I raise my hand and?
Yeah, so the beauty of this is for the Academy members, it's free. Of course, there's a business model for Tata Consultancy in this as well, but for Academy members, both the DevCloud and the support and the tutorials and training, it's all free. And our desire is to help as many students, developers get smart, learn AI, and discover new ways of using it as possible.
Mm-hmm. And then is there a mechanism whereby if I, say I'm working on something, it starts out as a little project, side project in the corner of the office or something like that, and then it grows into something that's more important for my company, like to get, more help?
Yeah, we do look for that. So we're always kind of monitoring and watching for those really cool things to emerge and see how we can help them be more successful. A lot of times they'll start to attract all kinds of support and interest in general, but early on, it's really helpful if we can say, hey, this guy's got something going here. Let's give him a little extra boost. So we're looking for that constantly. And on my team, what we've developed to do this is a program called Student Ambassadors. So since we rolled out the Academy, we've been going out to universities worldwide and running workshops, AI workshops. And we'll introduce technology into them, give them the basics, and then we'll hear what the students are working on. And those students are really passionate doing something really cool. We'll see if they want to become ambassadors for Intel. Okay. And if they're interested, then we'll give them even more training, more access to technology, and in return, just ask them to go tell other students about what they're doing and share their knowledge. So these 6 that were on the stage with me last night were ambassadors. Okay. One from UC Santa Barbara, one from MIT, one from Rutgers, one from ASU, and that's just the US. We're starting to have ambassadors all across the world from India, China, lots of them in Europe as well. And I'd say those are the cream of the crop that we're really monitoring to see what cool things are they going to come up with.
And if someone's listening and wants to get involved in the ambassador program, is there a mechanism for signaling their interest, or do they just get involved in the Academy and do cool things and you'll find them?
No, they actually can apply. So online at the Academy, you can just search on Intel Nervana Academy online and you'll find it. Mm-hmm. And then there's a apply to become a student ambassador. And you can fill out what you're working on, why you want to be an ambassador, and then we'll have someone follow up to do an interview and see if you're ready for that.
Okay, so interesting. Sounds like the DevCloud is supported by some pretty interesting programs. In terms of the DevCloud itself, if I'm an AI developer and I discover the Academy in DevCloud and have, an existing tool chain and set of tools really
sure.
that I'm using, will those work on the DevCloud, or do I need to port what I'm doing to the Intel Nervana tool stack in order to use the DevCloud?
There's a really good chance that they will already be preloaded on the DevCloud. Okay. So the DevCloud is not just for specific frameworks. It's really for, first of all, the Intel Xeon Scalable Processor is our hardware platform, and that will extend that when we have the new flavors of Nirvana technology come out. So we'll keep building that hardware. But on the software side, it's whatever software that will run great and that developers and students want to use. So today, the DevCloud supports Neon, supports TensorFlow, supports Caffe, supports Theano, Keras, most all the popular frameworks. And then Intel spent a lot of time optimizing them to run well on CPU. If you go back a couple of years ago, the frameworks ran great on GPUs, but not so well on CPUs. We've put a lot of investment over the last 9 months or so and seen the performance improve up to 100x on running those frameworks on CPUs. So Now we have optimized frameworks, pretty much the choice of the user gets to pick that, and then he'll get 200 gigabytes of secure storage area for his files, and load up his, queue up his project, and then we'll run it in the batch mode, and then he gets notified when it's ready and can do it again.
And so I suppose there are no GPUs in the DevCloud.
No, they were not necessary.
And so you talked about some of the performance metrics that you've seen recently. These are for this 100x, this improvement over time. This is for training or inference or both?
That's for training, really. And, deep learning, first of all, machine learning, the vast majority of the servers that are running machine learning workloads are powered by Xeon platforms and Xeon servers. Deep learning is a subset, and a fairly small but important subset of machine learning. And that's an area where we've seen the software optimizations make a huge difference on the time to train. And so developers now are seeing, what used to take months down to minutes to do training on Xeon scalable processors. So they have the DevCloud will give you access to that. If developers haven't tried it lately, they should try it now and see really, the great performance they'll get.
And so the 100x performance in the months down to minutes, that's relative to past performance on the Xeon with CPUs. Do you have any published comparisons relative to GPUs?
And I'll just note that a lot of it is really based on the software optimization more than anything. It's seen the huge difference. And we're seeing folks in the industry now start to publish really good results on the training side as well, compared to other alternatives in the market. So I don't know that we have any yet published on our site, but in general, we're seeing some really good results in the industry, and then we're seeing really good results on cloud service providers and what they're using as well for the technology.
You mentioned cloud service providers. Is DevCloud hosted by Intel Nervana, or have you partnered with one or more of the cloud service providers to make it available?
It's really part of our Nirvana cloud and really aligning those together. For the service providers, AWS or Google Cloud, they have great services today. They're using Xeon Scalable, and developer students can use those too. However, it can become costly for a student just getting started. So this is a way for them to sandbox and get started, and then move into a CSP model when they have a business that can support that.
Okay. So then the Intel Nervana cloud that's something that you're building built and are building and host in your own data centers and manage independent of the large cloud providers.
That's correct.
Okay. Great.
Another thing I'll mention too is that, Intel, one of the differentiators from Intel is we have such a broad portfolio of offerings, and from the data center to the edge. And in the data center, of course, there's training, there's inference on the Xeon, but we also have the FPGA product line. And recently, Microsoft announced that they're going to use the Stratix 10 FPGA for their Brainwave project to really power all of the inference in their DL platform in Brainwave. And we see a lot of opportunity with FPGAs as well, both in the data center and also at the edge for the inference piece.
Can you tell us a little bit about Brainwave for folks that missed that announcement?
Well, I'm not necessarily the expert on Brainwave, but it is Microsoft's deep learning platform. And they announced it's going to use the FPGA and the Stratix 10 because of the low latency, low power, high throughput it provides, and the flexibility. The FPGA is great in the flexibility it provides as AI evolves and changes. That we can do that.
Okay. All right, great.
And then the last thing I'll mention too is if we talk about the portfolio, is we also have at the edge, we have people developing solutions at the edge for deep learning that use the Atom core processor, Movidius for the video processing, and a whole host of this. And all of this is going to be part of the academy too. So developers can not only learn about, I want to do the training, the inference, and the data center, but at the edge too, and put a full end-to-end solution in place.
Okay. Awesome. One question I've got for you is, in your role as overseeing developer programs, there are Some interesting differences between the needs of traditional enterprise developers and more data science users, data scientists that, may probably also fall under developer programs for you. Can you talk a little bit about how, the different offerings you have that, target these different communities, and more generally, like how you're looking at these communities and how you plan to, evolve your offerings to serve both of them and give them what they need?
Sure. And that is a great point. AI really introduced us to new types of an audience for us. Because I run developer programs for Intel, and we cover the gamut from server to mobile and game developers and IoT developers across the board. Okay. And then we jumped into AI. Yeah, all of a sudden there's this data scientist, and they're like, "Oh, okay." We were used to maybe dealing more with C++ developers, right, and helping them optimize their code for the latest hardware that we had. And right, for data scientists, it's a different ball game. And first of all, most of them are using Python. What we've had to do is, okay, let's focus on how do we help them. They're going to be using frameworks. They need optimized frameworks. They need optimized versions of Python. They need really to understand the basics of machine learning and how to manage the data, how to apply machine learning versus how to really code in many cases. So we really had to look at this differently and start to say, okay, for these guys, let's teach them the basics on how to get started. Let's look at the tool set they will need from, like Python, for example. We have an Intel distribution of Python is really good for performance and really good for AI. And developers
Intel distribution of Python?
Yes. I've
never heard of this.
It's a parallel Python. And, really? Oh, yeah. So when we tell data scientists about this too, they're actually really excited as well because it can really help the performance of their application.
Where do you find this Intel distribution of Python?
It's easy to find. You just search on exactly that. You'll find it. You'll find it on our academy. We have lots of information about it there and the benefits.
And is it new kind of as part of the academy, or has it been around for...
It's been around a little while, but it's not that long. I'd say, last year, I believe it was when we rolled it out. In 2016.
And you said it's optimized around parallel and distributed?
Yeah, particularly for parallel, running really well in a parallel environment and getting the best performance out of Python applications.
And what's an example of a parallel environment and a workload that you might use this Python distribution with?
Well, I don't know if I have a real good example right there, but let me tell you about an example something we did just recently. We just wrapped up, is we did a contest with Kaggle.com. You're familiar with Kaggle, probably. And we said, let's find a partner in the industry who wants to solve a real-world AI problem, and they need some help. And so we partnered with Mobile ODT. And they're all about early detection of cancer and how they provide low-cost devices to early detect cancer. And so they provided a data set of 10,000 images.
Okay.
And we provide the developers with parallel Python, with access. This was an early version of our DevCloud. We were kind of in the pilot mode. Okay. So they got parallel Python, they got the DevCloud, in this case, it was Optimized Cafe. And we said, all right, whoever can provide the best algorithms and become the best at detection of the images that are cancerous will win lots of good prizes. And the response was great. We had up to 1,000 data scientists and developers competing on this and accessing the DevCloud on a daily basis. So it was a great test of this. It was a great test of the tool set and the whole model here. And at the end of the day, Mobile ODT was really excited about what they learned and are now following up with the winners to say, okay, how do we productize what you've done here together?
Interesting. I think a lot of folks use Python from, they'll use like Condas or some of these other Python distributions. Like, do you envision, partnerships how do you get this distribution of Python out there, right? So people I imagine, since I didn't know about it, that a lot of people don't know about it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've seen this, I think just based on other things that I've seen Intel do in the past, like, for example, in the Hadoop space, right? So there's a ton of interesting innovations that have happened in taking, Intel's deep knowledge of the hardware and like kind of driving that into, the mainstream Hadoop distributions and making them, just making them out of the box more performant based on, or more secure. Like there was some security and encryption stuff in the Hadoop example. I know of examples where, folks from Intel have partnered with, vendors like Docker and, other, lots of open source engagement. But in this Python case, like how do you get this out into the wild?
Well, a lot of that happens organically. If you have a good product and there's a Python community out there which is quite active and they start to hear about it, the word will spread organically. But to help that, we're becoming pretty proactive on awareness, driving just social media outreach, some digital online marketing, and other academy awareness in general, where Python is becoming a bigger message there that, hey, did you know this distribution is available and with these benefits? So I think it's a combination of those, and it won't be long before it's pretty well known within that community.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting. Any other cool stuff to tell me about that I didn't know about?
I don't think so. I think we hit on the main ones. The other thing to mention is that the Academy is growing fast. We already have coming up on 50,000 members, and we've been running workshops around the world at universities. We'll have probably 200 universities that will be participating by the end of this year, and trained about, I think we're around 25,000 developers and students so far this year. So it's really ramping up fast, and we have some big aggressive goals. We're really helping to bring AI to the masses, and through this DevCloud, make compute available, through the training, help them learn about it, the technical support with TCS. We're pretty serious about helping people learn and grow and use AI to do really cool things.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a huge growth opportunity, so I think it's a smart move. It makes sense. It makes me think a little bit of Apple's strategy back in the day to get into colleges and universities with the Macintosh, which helped propel them later on. So congrats on that, and congrats on the success of the Academy so far.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Scott. All right, everyone, that's our show for today. Thank you so much for listening and for your ongoing feedback and support. For more information on Naveen and Scott, for links to DevCloud or the AI Academy, and any of the other topics covered in this episode, head on over to twimlai.com/talk/51. For the rest of this series, visit twimlai.com/AISF2017. And please, please, please send us any questions or comments that you may have for us or for our guests via Twitter at twimlai or at Sam Charrington, or leave a comment on the show notes page. There are a ton of great conferences coming up through the end of the year. To keep up to date on which events we'll be attending and hopefully meet us there, check out our new events page at twimlai.com/events, TWIMLAI.com/events. Thanks again for listening, and catch you next time.